Waitress spots herself in rich man's framed photo, then collapses in tears. Imagine serving coffee to a millionaire and spotting your own childhood photo on his wall. She thought it was just a coincidence until he said something that shattered her world forever. Like and subscribe, because what happens next will leave you speechless. Aaliyah Monroe, a 24-year-old African-American waitress, had been working at the Rosewood Manor Cafe for nearly 3 years. It was a high-end place where silence was golden, and customers came not just for coffee but for privacy. Aaliyah was known for her quiet grace and work ethic, never late, always polite, and always wearing that soft smile. But deep down, she carried the scars of abandonment. Orphaned at 5 and bounced from foster home to foster home, she never had a real family. No keepsakes, not even a photo of her mother. All she had were fragments of memory, like a yellow sweater with a sunflower patch, the sound of a woman singing lullabies, and the scent of cinnamon in a tiny bedroom she barely remembered. One rainy Thursday morning, the cafe manager informed her of a special reservation table 7, the private suite, reserved for a man named Mr. Harold Weston. She had heard of him before. Harold Weston was a reclusive tech billionaire, the kind people only read about. He never smiled in photos, never gave interviews, and never appeared in public without purpose. As Aaliyah stepped into the private room with a silver tea tray in her hand, her eyes were immediately drawn to something on the bookshelf behind him, a framed photo. Her breath caught in her throat. She nearly dropped the tray. Inside the photo frame was a picture of a little black girl, around 5 years old, smiling under a tree. She wore a yellow sweater with a sunflower stitched on the front. Aaliyah's hand trembled. That was her. Her knees felt weak, and the tray finally slipped from her hand, crashing to the floor. Harold Weston stood up, startled, but Aaliyah's eyes were glued to the photo. "Where did you get that picture?" she asked in a whisper. The room froze in stillness. Mr. Weston stepped closer, his expression turning from confusion to something deeper: recognition, grief, disbelief. He picked up the photo frame and stared at it for a long moment, then looked at her. "You recognize this child?" he asked. Aaliyah nodded slowly. "That's me, I'm sure of it. I remember the sweater, the backyard. That was my foster home in Georgia." He sat down slowly, as if gravity had grown heavier. "I never expected anyone to know this girl. Not like this," he said quietly. Aaliyah felt a chill run through her. "Why do you have my photo?" Mr. Weston's side eyes. "Distant years ago, I was told I had a daughter, a baby girl I never got to hold. Her mother disappeared before I could find her again. I searched and searched. Finally, someone sent me this photo through an anonymous agency. There was no name, just a note that said, 'She's safe. Don't search.' And that was it." Aaliyah's voice broke as she asked, "Are you saying I might be your daughter?" He didn't speak. Instead, he rose and walked to his leather bag, pulling out a cloth-wrapped bundle. Inside was another photograph, an old hospital photo of a young mother holding a newborn baby. The mother looked exactly like Aaliyah. Aaliyah's hand instinctively reached into her apron pocket, pulling out her one cherished possession, a faded photo of that same woman, the one she always believed was her birth mother. The resemblance was undeniable. "Her name was Amira," Mr. Weston said, his voice barely audible. "I loved her in college, but my family didn't approve. My father forced her to leave the country. When I tried to find her, she had already passed away. I never knew what happened to the baby. Until now." Tears filled Aaliyah's eyes. For years, she had wondered if anyone even remembered her mother. And now, standing before her, was the man who had searched for both of them in silence for 2 decades. Aaliyah sat there frozen, the photos shaking in her hands. The walls of silence around her life were crumbling fast. Mr. Weston looked at her with eyes filled with pain. "I never wanted to lose you. When Amira vanished, I hired investigators, lawyers, anyone who could help. But every trail went cold." Aaliyah could barely speak. "I was just a kid. I remember being taken away in the middle of the night. They said Mama was gone. I never knew why or where I came from." At that moment, the door opened, and a woman in her 60s stepped in. She wore a blue silk scarf and gentle eyes. Mr. Weston introduced her. "This is Margaret. She used to work for the private agency that sent me your photo." Margaret looked at Aaliyah as if seeing a miracle. "You've grown into the woman your mother prayed you'd be," she whispered. Aaliyah blinked. "Why? Didn't anyone tell me? Why was I left in the system with nothing?" Margaret's voice trembled. "Your mother asked us to hide your identity. She didn't trust what would happen if people found out who your father was. There were threats, powerful people who didn't want you to be found. So we buried the trail. It was the only way to protect you." Aaliyah's throat tightened. "And now," Margaret smiled faintly, "now it's safe. The people who wanted to keep you apart are gone. You're finally free to know who you are." Mr. Weston stepped closer. "If you'll allow me, I'd like to be part of your life, not to fix the past, but to start again." Aaliyah looked at the framed photo again. It had once been the only proof he had of her existence. Now it had become the beginning of a new chapter neither of them expected. Despite the overwhelming emotion, both Aaliyah and Mr. Weston knew they needed to confirm the truth. Quietly and privately they agreed to a DNA test. No news coverage, no lawyers, just a simple test and a waiting period filled with hope and quiet dread. Mr. Weston invited her to his estate during those days, and she was surprised by what she saw. The home wasn't a cold mansion, it was warm and personal. The walls were lined with portraits, books, and even paintings of her mother. "You painted these?" she asked, stunned. He nodded. "It was the only way I could remember her." 3 days later, the results arrived. Olia unfolded the letter with trembling hands. 99.9% match, father and daughter. Her knees buckled and tears rolled down her face. Mr. Weston caught her in an embrace and she sobbed into his shoulder. "I missed so much," he whispered. "Your first steps, your birthdays, your dreams." Olia looked up at him. "You didn't leave me. You were kept away from me. I believe that now." He held her hands tightly. "You never have to work again, Olia. I can take care of everything." She smiled gently. "I don't want to be taken care of. I just want to know who I am. I want answers. I want time." He nodded. "Then, let's take time together." In the months that followed, Olia didn't immediately quit her job at the cafe. She needed space, time, and a sense of normalcy. But something had changed in her. She stood taller, smiled fuller. The other waitresses noticed. "You glowing girl," one of them teased. Word began to spread about who she really was. One day a young girl came into the cafe and whispered, "Are you the one who found her dad after all these years?" Olia nodded softly. "Yes, that's me." On weekends she visited her father's estate. They cooked together, read old journals, and uncovered memories of Amira, her mother, piece by piece. One day, Mr. Weston led her to his study. Beside the framed photo of her as a child, he had added a new one, Olia, aged 24, beaming with pride. Underneath it, he had inscribed, "My daughter, my miracle, the light I never stopped searching for." Back at the cafe, her manager had framed a photo which showed Olia and Mr. Weston together, standing side by side under a tree. A note beneath it read, "Sometimes, the past finds you when you least expect it. And sometimes, love never stops waiting." Olia Monroe had spent most of her life searching for where she belonged. Now, finally, she knew. She wasn't just a waitress. She was a daughter, a survivor, and proof that even the most broken past can lead to a beautiful future.